Now, after that wonderful performance by Joseph, let's move on to our next event.
Our third event of the night is a persuasive speech by Akela Flaherty. Akela is actually a fellow Com1 student who was invited to perform her amazing speech for us all tonight, as well as represent SRJC at the last tournament of this season 2 weeks ago, where she did fantastic.
Persuasive is a style of speech meant to persuade. It contains informational elements, but ultimately intends to change your mind.
So imagine those conversations over the holidays with your relatives that you only see at the holidays, but in this case, there's actual facts and information being shared.
Let's get a round of applause to welcome Akela.
Imagine a place where humans can decide what beneficial genes they want to add to their bodies and what negative factors they want to omit. You go into a lab, you tell a scientist, inject me with something that guarantees I won't age, or give me something that ensures no illness for the rest of my life. Some of you may be thinking, sounds pretty cool. While the rest of you may be thinking, sounds bizarre, or not for me. Well, essentially, this is what happens for something to be considered genetically modified. While sometimes referred to as frankenfoods, GMO stands for genetically modified organisms. In order for something to be genetically modified, it means that a portion of DNA is taken from one organism and inserted into another with the end goal of producing desirable characteristics. In the US, genetically modified or GM foods are extremely common. About 92% of corn and 94% of soy in the US is genetically modified. The US Food and Drug Administration needs to pass a specific law that regulates the production of GM foods such as corn and soy, making it safer for the public. Today, I will go over a known chemical that hides within some of these GM foods. Then I will discuss the harmful health effects that a toxin within them may bring to the consumer, followed by some common misconceptions towards GM foods, and lastly, what we can do to put an end to this practice. So originally, GM foods sought to decrease pesticide use, but now these foods have dramatically increased the use of pesticides along with herbicides, which has had a domino effect on the amount of chemicals that we are ingesting. GM crops are bred to be tolerant to pests and weeds. According to Beth Hoffman, a reporter for the food and agriculture sector of Forbes magazine, 73% of all corn is now genetically modified to withstand the chemicals produced to kill competing weeds. But while these crops are resistant to pests, the weeds that grow around them are not. And this urges farmers to kill the weeds by spraying both the crop and weeds with pesticides and herbicides. According to clinical nutritionist Melissa Smith, while these pesticides cover the crop in chemicals, they also make their way into the crop themselves, surrounding area of the crop, and soil of the crop. One of the most commonly used herbicides is known as Roundup, produced by the company Monsanto. Glyphosate is an active ingredient in one of the most harmful chemicals found in Roundup. According to Dr. Mills of Family Medicine and Public Health, since the introduction of GMOs in 1996, Americans' exposure to glyphosate has increased by 500%. Meanwhile, according to the World Health Organization's Cancer Research Agency, glyphosate is a probable carcinogen. A study conducted by the biologists among cell chemical biology found strong links between glyphosate and fatty liver disease, liver cirrhosis, breast cancer cell growth, and other cancers. Currently, there are more than 650 lawsuits against the Roundup producer Monsanto. Those suing are stating that exposure to this herbicide have caused them or their loved ones to develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that Monsanto has covered up the risks. About a month ago, a Sonoma County resident was awarded $80 million from a federal jury as a result of being diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma due to his consistent use of Roundup. Additionally, there are more than 9,000 similar actions against Monsanto pending in state courts. So now that we know about the most common of the chemicals, let's focus on a toxin produced by some GM foods and the health effects that follow. While GM foods have not been thoroughly tested for human consumption, the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, known as the AAEM, have noticed GM foods to be playing a role in our nation's health crisis. Furthermore, the AAEM state that GM foods pose a serious health risk in the areas relating to toxicology, allergy, immune function, and reproductive, genetic, and physiologic health. A study conducted by the Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology fed mice GM corn. They found a toxin referred to as Bt toxin present in the mice produced by this corn. This toxin dramatically disrupted the immune function in their gut. Similarly, a study done by the Institute for Responsible Technology, known as the IRT, found health complications from the same GM corn toxin. It was found that Bt toxin may either trigger or further aggravate a gluten-related disorder, such as celiac disease. Those who were sensitive to gluten and ate this corn were found to have damage to their intestinal wall, a lack of gut bacteria, and impaired digestion. Additional studies by the IRT examined the health complications of this GM corn on animals and humans. Animals were shown to have organ damage, accelerated aging, infertility, and gastrointestinal and immune system disorders. Humans were found to have leftover materials, such as toxins and chemicals inside of them from these GM foods. Such leftover materials do have links to the long-term problems of a rise in allergies, rise in cancers, and lack of immune function. So if there have been numerous studies linking these adverse health effects to these GM foods, why are so many of us so ignorant to the health issues that these foods are bringing us? Well, today, there is still controversy and misunderstandings over the matter that GM foods benefit our economy and at times our environment. In a nation of economic inequality, GM foods are far more affordable than most foods. Their high and large yields attempt to battle world hunger, and their genetically altered DNA make them resistant to disease, which decreases food waste. But while these foods may be somewhat advantageous to ourselves and our economy, they are not worth the cost to our health. In addition to these adverse health effects, GM foods support the obesity epidemic. The World Center for Disease Control and Prevention have noticed that since the introduction of GMOs, our obesity epidemic has continued to accelerate dramatically. Over 80% of processed foods contain GM foods. Anything containing high fructose corn syrup, canola oil, or soybean oil are all genetically modified, and that account for almost all processed foods. So, as a nation, what should we do about this? The U.S. Food and Drug Administration needs to pass a specific law requiring all GM foods to be tested for toxins and chemicals prior to consumption by the public. There should be labs that are exclusive to testing GM foods only. This way, any new toxin or chemical brought into the lab can be traced back to the GM food being tested. Each crop should be extensively tested for years until they are fully clear and safe of any toxin or chemical that is determined as harmful to human health. This way, scientists will be able to factor out and abolish any potential threat to human wellness. And while this law could increase the overall well-being of humans, it also has the potential of curbing our obesity epidemic as well. Although, with the knowledge of how long our government takes to pass legislation, what can we do personally? Well, first, we need to start viewing GM foods for what they really are, a threat to our environment and our health. As individuals, we can advise one another to seek out those non-GMO labels when grocery shopping. When buying produce, we can support farms within our community by buying local, organic produce. As a community, we can support farms. We can also just support the anti-GMO campaigns. Nonprofit organizations such as the Non-GMO Project or the Just Label It campaign push for legislation against GMO foods. In general, many of us do not consider or even pay attention to whether or not what we are eating has been genetically altered in some way. Food is not like it used to be. In today's society, you need to put a lot of thought into what you are about to eat. We now need to consider the potential effect that corn tortilla or corn fructose-filled lollipop may have on our health. We need to start educating our friends and family on the future that these foods may bring to us. Do you want to continue jeopardizing your health? What about the health of your loved ones? All you need to do is eat healthier and search for those labels. It is as simple as that, because I can assure you all that you do not want to become the next Frankenfood.